We all know that Malifaux is a place where bad things happen, and for the most part, those bad things happen because of bad people. But there's a pretty wide variety of the types of bad people that you might find in Malifaux, and some of them are significantly worse than others. So I thought it would be interesting to go through all the characters and pick out the top 5 worst of the worst when it comes to people in Malifaux. Now, keep in mind, we're not going to be talking about people like the tyrants because they're kind of their own separate thing. We're going to stick to pretty much everyone else. And another important note here is that just doing things like killing people is not really going to be enough to get you on this list because everybody in Malifaux kind of does a little bit of killing here and there. So it would be really hard to hold 1 or 2 murders against any particular character because everybody's kind of doing it. So we're going to be grading on a curve here, and we're going to sort of excuse 1 or 2 bodies that someone might have. We're going to consider things like people's motivations, the extreme lengths that they go to with their crimes, and the number of people that they affect with their horrible deeds. But before I get into my list, I want you to get down in the comments and give me your top 5 worst people in Malifaux, and let me know why. I think there is a little bit of subjectivity here in terms of what people think is particularly egregious, so it'll be interesting to see what some other people think are the worst offenders. But with that, let's get into number 5. Now, Sheamus is a notorious serial killer, and while I said that 1 or 2 bodies wasn't going to be enough to get you on this list, Sheamus has been responsible for quite a bit more than 1 or 2 bodies. He's the most notorious serial killer in all of Malifaux, and he has a reputation for haunting people. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, Sheamus is also known for targeting sex workers, who are a vulnerable class of people, and I think that makes his actions particularly bad. If he was just out killing people at random, then it would certainly not be a good thing, but I think the fact that he is seeking out people that are in this vulnerable position and targeting them in particular is not really a good look. Now, in addition to all that, he takes his victims and then raises them and turns them into zombies, and while the Malifaux fiction is not super clear about the level of consciousness that a zombie retains, or if they're fully under the control of the necromancer that raises them, it's a little bit hard to say, but no matter which way you cut it, it's a pretty horrible existence that he's putting these undead through. We don't get a clear indication that he is continuing to sleep with all of his undead prostitute zombies, but it's definitely hinted at that he's pretty creepy and that he hits on a lot of them and he's sort of has them for the purposes of doing dirty things with them. And that definitely makes this whole thing a lot worse. Is it a sexual assault if this person is under his control and doesn't have their own free will? Or is it just necrophilia? I don't really know what the answer to that question is, but either way, it's pretty horrible. On top of all that, we definitely know that he has at least bragged about sleeping with Molly, and honestly, anyone who hurts Molly is earning themselves a spot on this list anyway, and we know that they have a pretty difficult relationship, and Molly is not particularly fond of Sheamus for a variety of reasons. So Sheamus is my number 5 worst person in all of Malifaux. Now, this one I think might be a little bit controversial, but I am putting Lord Cooper at number 4. Now, not only is Lord Cooper a Nepo baby who inherited all of his money and now uses his money to sort of exploit people and take advantage of the rest of society, but he also hunts people for sport, which, if you made a list of horrible things that you could do as a human being, that would definitely be pretty high on that list. Now, some people would make the argument that those people are agreeing to this relationship, but I would say that that is just part of him exploiting people and taking advantage of them. We're talking about the dregs of society who are absolutely destitute and haven't been able to make a life for themselves for a variety of reasons, and he is taking advantage of their vulnerability and using it against them. I think anyone who has a desire to hunt other humans for fun shows that they are evil on a level that is incomparable for anybody who's not on this list. And while he's probably not doing as much actual damage to society as somebody like Sheamus, I think it shows that his motivations are potentially a little bit worse. Sheamus hunts and kills people because he's crazy. Lord Cooper hunts and kills people because he's evil. It's a minor distinction, but I think that it's something that's important to note here. Now, Lord Cooper is also the founder of the Explorer Society, and this is an organization that we don't really know a ton about, but we do know that they're out there exploiting people and collecting artifacts from native civilizations. And while some of the things that they do aren't horrible, they are sort of explorers and adventurers, there's definitely a pretty negative impact that they're having on certain groups of people. I don't know about you, but I think that any organization full of hyper-rich people who are getting together to do all sorts of bad things away from the eyes of the rest of the society, I think I would classify that as pretty evil. There are definitely people in real life who like to go collect precious artifacts and relics from other cultures, and I'm just going to go ahead and say that they should be on this list too. If you're enjoying this video and you want to support the channel, then there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. The first would be to pick up some merchandise through my merch store. You can grab a t-shirt, a hoodie, a mug, a sticker, all sorts of cool stuff like that. You can also shop using my affiliate links, so if you're going to make any purchases from any of these companies, you can use the links in the description below to make your purchases, and it will go directly to supporting the channel at no extra cost to you. There's also a link for my Ko-fi if you would just like to give me a tip, or my Patreon if you want to support me longer term. I have a bunch of different tiers there, and there are all sorts of benefits available to people, such as early access to videos, ad-free videos, the opportunity to vote in polls about upcoming content, and extra entries into the giveaways that I run occasionally. But if none of that is your cup of tea, no problem at all. Just make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and leave a like on the video. It actually helps a tremendous amount. And if you want to go the extra mile, then consider sharing the video out with some friends who you think might find it interesting. The YouTube algorithm is not kind to small YouTubers, so that helps a whole bunch. Other than that, consider joining the Discord, also linked in the description, where you can come and hang out with me and the rest of the community and talk games. But with that, let's get right back to the video. Now, Lucius is one of those characters that I think is very clearly evil, but for some reason you want to like him. He's very different than the other characters on this list because we don't really know why it is that he does what he does. But it seems like his main motivation is really just accumulating power for himself. He's obviously manipulating people within the guild, and also to a lesser extent manipulating the other Neverborn, all seemingly in an effort to orchestrate his own sort of accumulation of power. Now, sometimes that just looks like him manipulating bureaucracy and kind of gaining power the way that most people gain power, but in a lot of cases that involves him murdering people, backstabbing people, and doing all sorts of other shady business. On top of all that, he doesn't even really seem to be concerned for his own people. In theory, he is a member of the Neverborn, and while a lot of the Neverborn do bad things, they are often doing it in an effort to protect their own people or to prevent the tyrants from coming back, and it's not clear that Lucius cares about any of that. It seems like he really doesn't care much about the other Neverborn at all, and he really just is out for himself. Now, on top of all that, we know that Lucius really revels in the destruction of things that are expensive and took a lot of time and effort to make. So he does things like smoke fancy cigars and drink expensive alcohol, not because he enjoys those things. In fact, he can't enjoy those things, but simply for the fact that he is able to destroy them and use them in a wasteful way. Now, it also seems like he has a similar approach when it comes to people, because he certainly takes some amount of enjoyment in just wasting human lives. He seems to find it funny or entertaining in some way, and we've seen a few examples of him sort of even torturing or playing with his prey before he eventually kills them. Now, again, it doesn't seem like he actually gets anything real out of that. It's not like he needs to eat humans to sustain himself. He just seems to enjoy killing humans to show that he can. I think a lust for power is a pretty common vice among people, but I think going to any length to accumulate that power and also taking this level of enjoyment in destroying things, wasting things, and even killing people, I think that earns Lucius a spot on this list. Now, some of you are going to be pretty surprised to see Sonia Cred at number 2, because I famously hate her so bitterly. But before we get to number 1, let's go through Sonia Cred's rap sheet and talk a little bit about why I hate her so much and she deserves to be number 2 on this list. Sonia Cred heads up the Witch Hunter division, and they are famous for going out and killing people just for having magical abilities. Now, I don't know if you could think of any instances throughout human history where people were killed just for the nature of who they were born as, but I think we can all agree that that's pretty horrible. I think if you think of any historical villains off the top of your head, you can make a comparison between Sonia Cred and them. Because we're not talking about a situation where these people are criminals or they're doing anything particularly evil. They're literally just going out and hunting people because they have magical ability. There's a famous story in one of the Through the Breach books where Sonia Cred actually kills a little girl in cold blood in the middle of the street, and it causes a riot because obviously that's not something that the government should be doing. Now, I would say that anybody who kills people is bad, but I think it's particularly bad when they're a person who is supposed to be in a position of authority and seems like they should be protecting innocent people. The fact that she's clothed with the authority of the guild, which is basically the government in Malifaux, and she's abusing that power and using it to kill innocent people makes it just a little bit worse. It's why a lot of people react so negatively when you see a cop committing a crime, because these are people who are supposed to be entrusted with the protection of the people, and when they abuse that power, it's bad. Now, some of you might be thinking to yourself, well, what if she is actually protecting people from the dangers that are posed by mages who might be out there? And I might agree with that argument if Sonia Cred believed that or actually seemed to be acting on that motivation in any way at all. But the reality of the situation is we know why Sonia Cred joined up with the guild, and the reason she did it was because she was out hunting magical artifacts and knew that if she cooperated with the guild, she would have more access to those magical artifacts. So this is strictly a selfish motivation to gain power for herself. She was not out there trying to save innocent people or protect the people who don't have magical abilities from some perceived menace of the magic users. She's really just out there trying to collect treasures and gain more magic power. Now, if all of that wasn't enough to convince you, then I think maybe the most famous and high-profile evil thing that Sonia Cred does has to do with the Witchling Stalkers. These are actually mages who she captures and then tortures and gives them basically a magical lobotomy and turns them into little slave drones that she brings with her when she's out hunting more mages. Again, perhaps this is a little bit of a ridiculous example, but if you think of something comparable in the real world, if we were lobotomizing people and then enslaving them to fight what we perceived as our enemies, we would all agree that that's a pretty horrible, horrible thing to do, and I think that earns Sonia Cred at least a number 2 spot on this list. I think number 1 has got to be former Governor General Herbert Kishner. This is a man who, one of the first times we meet him, is sending out a hit squad to assassinate the lover of his son because he doesn't approve of their relationship. He's evil, power-hungry dictator who pulls all the strings in Malifaux and is overseeing all of the different departments, some of which are maybe legitimately protecting the people of Malifaux, but also include people like Sonia Cred. So in some way, he's responsible for all of the horrible things that Sonia Cred does. And that's one of the reasons why I think he's worse than her. Over the course of the story arc that Kishner is involved in, we find out that he is using magical means to subvert the wills of all of the people of Malifaux and sort of put them under his control. He performs this magical ritual that basically gives him some level of control over all of the people of Malifaux, and then even spreads that influence across to the contract towns. Now, enslaving people's minds is definitely an evil thing, but then we find out that he was actually doing this as part of a larger plan to ascend to a demigod-like form, where he would obtain ultimate power and become immortal, and we can only guess as to what he would do with that power, but I'm sure it would not be good. Now, Kishner actually gives a really interesting speech to Perdita at one point in the story where he talks about how the guild is a necessary force because they are sort of bringing civilization to the frontiers in Malifaux. And if you read that conversation in the most generous light to Kishner, I think you could come to a reasonable conclusion that he has his heart in the right place. But I really think that he's a man who needs to be judged by his actions and not just his words. We never once see him act in any way that shows that he's trying to do anything like what he says in that conversation. And every time we see him in the story, he is trying to manipulate people, he is killing innocents, he is trying to accumulate more power. And we never once see any indication that he has anything but a selfish motive for any of it. Now, I think Kishner might be a victim of his own success to an extent when it comes to this list, because I don't think he's actually more evil than some of the other people on this list, but I think the impact of his actions is more significant because of how much he was able to achieve. Certainly, if Sheamus had the power and authority that some of the other people on this list had, he would have a lot more bodies to his name. But that's why I think you have to consider both the impact of what these people are doing as well as their motivation and their psychology. That makes it a very subjective list, but I think it would be hard to argue that Kitchener's not the most evil bastard there is in Malifaux. I'm glad to see him gone. Marlowe seems much more reasonable, and I think a good indication that Marlowe is much better than Kishner is that Lucius really hates Marlowe and is really upset about the change of power in the guild. Now, hopefully you already posted a list of your own in the comments below, so compare that to mine and let me know what you think. How do you feel about my top 5? Do you think any of these people shouldn't be on this list? Do you think any of these people should be higher on this list? Make sure you give me a reason why. Don't just say that you think Cooper is wonderful and innocent and that Hoffman is actually the real problem in Malifaux, because that's crazy. This was a really fun video to do. I have been thinking about doing a similar video to this, talking about some of the better people in Malifaux, because that's a conversation that I think the community really likes to have. I usually see questions on places like Discord where people are saying, who are the good guys in Malifaux? And there's a couple of names that always come up, and I think I actually might have a different take than a lot of people out there. So let me know if that's something that you would be interested in seeing as well. With that, I want to send a huge thank you to the extremely cool kids tier on Patreon, the Steam Power Scoundrels, Dogmatized, Spanner Rider, Dynat, Robbie Ounce, Tom Likely, and Russets, and thanks for watching.